So good morning. Good morning, all of you. We expected other people, but somehow we have not seen them. Before we start, I want to spend a moment in thinking about the people who are dying. And I saw this news last night. So can we have a moment of silence? Just for a few seconds. Think about, like we have done before, that what this pandemic is and people are suffering. Just a few seconds of silence. Thank you. So we have now this, we call this outreach lecture. I just want to say what this outreach is. We are India Discovery Center. Two news came out yesterday and this morning. The first news is the International Space Station. So a new rocket went and 4 people were unloaded to the space station. Such activity attracted some of us in 70s to come to US. To Space was romance, to participate in the space travel. To be no noise. Participate in space travel. Then I saw a news this morning in the New York Times about the death in India and the situation therein. So in that news, so there's a statement, it's a front page news. The statement, cremations are an important part of Hindu burial rituals, seen as a way to free the soul from the body. So when we immigrated, we did not know this is the prevalent view of Indians abroad, that people are searching for soul. And this thing bothered us when we first knew about it, but then we had no control on it. It's pervasive. We don't know if it's called ignorance or it is called domination or both. I tried to check with the academics, check with the intellectuals, but we did not know religion is a strong element in the foreign countries, and soul is an entity, and people search for it. But our children were affected otherwise because classroom instructions were affected by this kind of instructions, and the confusion therein could not be alleviated because the children are neither here nor there. So many years later, when we thought about this more, so we made this, I thought we will do something. Something to be done is difficult. So I visited India, and now we do this noise go? Is everybody muted? So,
Yes.
but noise comes in. Now noise comes in again. So we then started this India Discovery Center about 10 years ago to see whether we can really create something from our side, from our viewpoint. Because what we discovered was that we were the first people from India who are living abroad who came on our free will. So we are not somebody who has subjugated us, brought us here. We also discovered that in America is a free country. We can pursue our profession. So the point was that can we make our children also pursue professions which would be try to analyze the empiricism that India has brought in. Empiricism is how do you speak, what words are, what rhythm is, what a tune is, how does music come, how does sound produce itself, what is space. So all those have been empirically analyzed, possibly experimentally, but we don't have any trace of it. So the thought was, hopefully, if we present it to the children, so they can in the future possibly create analytic explanations. So is India Discovery Center, create a viewpoint on behalf of India by people of India who are born in India to see how they view India and whether children can really engage themselves in new research. So we called it Discovery of India, India Discovery Center. Today we are entering into another discovery. That discovery is what India discovered, what India did discover. We have seen books, literature, poetry, religion, philosophy, architecture, music, but the rudiments of it, the fundamentals of it, have not been analyzed. So this outreach lecture is a series what we thought conceived is to see if we can really bring out the fundamentals of it. So this is how things began, how they began in literature, how they began in music, how they began in dance, how they began in architecture, how they began in design, how they began in textiles, how they began in metallurgy. So how they began, what are the empiricism that went in to begin them? Not what we observe, but how we began. And we have, we are so grateful that Professor Tripathi, I gave the first lecture on February. So Professor Tripathi, whom I met we met in Bangkok on a Sanskrit conference, and is a profound scholar, very humble, extremely learned. And when I requested him that would he kindly give us his time to present on Indian music, he very kindly agreed. Now, I don't go into the laurels of his. They are like a pages of material of awards and positions and contributions and books. But let his speech today present himself how he has studied India. So the topic is the tradition of Indian music, and I have the great pleasure of introducing Professor Tripathi to our audience. And so let Professor Tripathi begin his lecture. I would say all people kindly mute yourself, and then we will, if your questions come, use the chat room to put your questions there. Then at the end, Prem Nagar will read the questions and Professor Nagar will answer them. And if we have time, we may go for some live questioning also. So with that, here is Professor Radha Ballabh Tripathi, and he's in Bhopal. And we are so grateful. And let us namaskar him. Thank you, sir. Professor Tripathi.
Namaskar. Am I audible?
Yes.
So, good
Yes.
morning to all of you, my friends from US, and good evening to my friends from India. There is a gap of time, and literature and arts, they work as bridges across times and countries. I am very thankful to India Discovery Center and our friends Vijayji, Premji, Chanduji for being given this wonderful opportunity to say something on the tradition of Indian music. I very much appreciate the sort of work Vijayji and his colleagues, his wonderful team is doing in US under the aegis of IDC. I would like to explain before you that I am neither a musician, nor a musicologist, nor even a scholar of Veda. But my friend Vijay Mishraji trusted me and he was confident that I can speak on the tradition of Indian music, and I trusted his discretion. Therefore, I am here before you. Luckily, I hope that the experts whom I wanted to be here, they might have joined. So if they are here, I'm fortunate enough. Professor Aklujkar, Professor Bahulkar, they are renowned scholars of Veda. And Bharat Gupta, I don't know whether he has joined. He is an authority on Natya Shastra and Indian music and musicology, and a musician by his own right. And one more friend, Bhargav Thakkar, is a theatre personality who has produced Sanskrit plays as per Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra. And happily for me, we have a young, talented scholar, Dr. Rishiraj Pathak. He has worked on a phonetic and semantic study of musicology in Sama Veda for his PhD. And he was very kind to supply me notations of Sama mantras prepared by some traditional Pandit and some Samaveda Pathins. He will be with you. He will be joining in between my lectures to present some Samgana, some renderings of Samaveda mantras, the oldest form of Indian music. And I will not display the notations prepared by a traditional Pandit, which Pathakji has in his record. He is going to publish them anyway, along with his thesis. So I thought that it will not be proper to display them. Maybe it would be a violation of intellectual copyrights. This lecture will be focusing on the early beginnings of musical system in India. Roughly, you can say 8000 BC. This is a very wild guess, you can say. It could be even prior to that, or it could be a little bit later to that. But I believe that Rig Veda, the oldest literature, the oldest text in the world library, that was a corpus of it, a part of it had already been composed around 8000 BC. And we will be covering music system in Rig Veda. Therefore, roughly, the upper limit for the time frame for the Indian tradition of music is 8000 BC. We will be learning about musical instruments described in Rig Veda and some form of vocal music that is also indicated in Rig Veda. So those who have not studied Sanskrit literature and those who are not familiar with Vedic literature, they should remember this name, Rig Veda. Rig Veda, the oldest work in Sanskrit, oldest work in world library, in the whole world literary tradition and a world heritage. So we will be discussing the concept of swara, you can say musical notations. We will be also discussing some other sounds. They are called stobha. So you should also remember this word, stobha. Stobha is meaningless sound, and we will come to it. And Rishi Raj Pathak would also demonstrate how stobha is rendered in Sama Gana, in singing of Sama mantras. Then some other concepts in Indian music, in Indian music we will be discussing, like nada. Nada is sound. It is, you can say, cosmic sound vibrating everywhere, and it is ahata is audible nada, audible sound, and anahata is inaudible sound. Sound you hear within, and the sound you hear without. So these are the concepts. We will try to discuss them. And 7 notes in Samgana. There are 7 notes in Indian musical system also, in classical music. Even today we use these 7 notes, Shadj Gandhar, Rishabh, Dhaivat, Nishad, etc. So the oldest form of these 7 notes as per Sama tradition, and some other concepts, these various sections of Samagana. I will not read the technical names now. I don't want to confront you, frighten you with these so many Sanskrit words. And we will also discuss the singers of Sama. Some varieties of singers of Sama, they are described in the Sama tradition of music. And we will cover the time frame beginning from 8000 BC to approximately 1000 BC. Roughly, this is the time frame covering the early beginnings of the tradition of Indian music for this lecture. And the upper limit, I have set 8000 BC because I believe that some portion, as I said, some portions of the Rig Veda had already been composed by this time. And 1000 BC is the lower limit because I am citing Aitreya Brahmana. Aitreya Brahmana. You also please remember this name. The author of Aitreya Brahmana, the Aitreya Mahidasa, was a great seer, a great thinker, and he has written on arts and culture. He is supposed to be the oldest great aesthetician in Indian tradition of aesthetics. So we will be covering some of his thoughts, some of his views on music and tradition of art in India. That text by him, a voluminous text, a Brahmana text of Rig Veda. The definition of Veda is mantra and Brahmana together. They are called Veda. Brahmana doesn't mean any caste here. Brahmana is a text. So every Veda has a Brahmana text. So Rig Veda has Aitreya Brahmana, and Aitreya Mahidasa, the seer, was its author. He was the son of Itra Dasi, a Shudra woman, but he became a seer. So we will not discuss how Aitreya Mahidas became a seer, a rishi, but this is a great text which already had been composed by 1000 BC. So some ideas from it we will be discussing. And I think there is no occasion to discuss the problems of historicity or periodicity of Rig Veda or Aitreya Brahmana. Roughly I have accepted these upper and lower limits, and we'll proceed further. So coming to the next, I would also like you to remember, no, the earlier one. I would also like you to remember these 4 names of the Vedas. No, please, the earlier slide. So the earlier one, prior to it. Yeah. So Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajurveda, and Atharvaveda. So please remember these names. So this is the oldest literature in India. They are called Vedas, Vedic Samhitas. So we will be covering up all the 4 Vedas. These are the 4 Vedas. Any problem, Vijayji?
হবে না আমাদের দ্বারা
Is there any problem?
No, kindly mute all other than Dr. Tripathi.
Shall I continue?
Yes, please.
So these are the 4 Vedas, and 4 priests are mentioned in correlation to each one of them. So the priest for Rig Veda is Hota, and the priest for Samveda is Udgata, and the priest for Yajurveda is Advaryu, and the priest for Atharvaveda is Brahma. So if possible, please remember these names. Otherwise, at least Udgata. Udgata means one who sings, and Udgata is connected to Samaveda, and Samaveda is for music. Samaveda is for singing. All other remaining Vedas are for recitation, chanting. Only Samaveda has mantras which are to be rendered through music. And Samaveda led to the beginning of Indian music. It is the source book for Indian music also. So Udgata is the person who used to render Sama mantras through music. Otherwise, all the 4 priests are connected respectively to these 4 Vedas. Next. Now, the concepts of 7 notes, as I discussed. Today also, in Western music also you have notes. In Indian music, there are 7 notes. So these 7 notes, or swaras, as they are known, that had evolved from Rig Veda. The very word swara came to denote the number 7. And Pingal Sutra, which is the earliest text, Vedic text on Chandas Shastra, on the science of prosody, Chandas Shastra.
খালি আনমিউট হয়ে যাচ্ছে
Pingal Sutra is the first text written maybe around 500 BC or prior to that. And Pingal Sutra says that swara, the term swara itself denotes 7, number 7. Swara denotes the syllables, the varnas in grammar. Swara also denotes notations, notes of music, and swara also denotes number 7. So in Vyakarana, that is grammar, next, swaras form the basis of the alphabet, and the whole vocabulary also is formed by swaras. And swaras can be pronounced without the support of any other sound. A, I, U, A, O, these are the swaras. 7 swaras are there. Like 7 notes of music, swaras are also 7 in Sanskrit. In English, I don't know A and E and I and O, perhaps these are the vowels. So linguistically, vowel is a swara, grammatically or as per grammar. And in music, swara is notation. So there is a connectivity or parity between the swara of Vyakarana or grammar and swara of music. Just as the swara, vowel in English, you can say, forms the foundation of the vocabulary, and the consonants can be pronounced only with the help of swaras or vowels. As far as I know, in Vyakarana. So when you pronounce ka, the sound of a is added. If a is omitted, then you cannot pronounce ka. Either you prefix it with a or e or u. So you say ik, ak, uk. Then you can pronounce ka. Or you suffix it with a or e or u. Then you can pronounce ka. In the same way, k, sound k in English also. You add some vowel after it, then perhaps you can pronounce it. So no sound can be produced without the basis of swara, and in music equally, as well as in grammar and in language. So therefore Patanjali, who is the greatest theoretician, one of the greatest theoreticians in Vyakarana, grammar, he sees a parity between the swaras of grammar and the swaras of music. And he also defines 7 swaras in Mahabhashya. Mahabhashya is the most voluminous text in the field of grammar, an exposition of Panini's Ashtadhyayi. So these names of swaras are given by Patanjali: Udatta, Udatta Tar, Anudatta, Anudatta Tar, Swarit, Udatta, Antya Visishta Udatta, and Ekashruti Saptama. So I will not go into the details of these swaras. They are linked to the swaras in grammar, pronunciation, and swaras in music as well. So this linkage is there. And these 7 swaras, next, the 7 swaras of Indian music. Yes, they are generated from the 7 varieties of 3 swaras. There are 3 swaras in Vedic chanting: Udatta, Anudatta, and Swarit. So there are 3 pitches are there. Udatta is a bit raised voice, raised pitch. Anudatta is lowered, and Swarita is on equal footing. So these 3 pitches are there, and 7 notes in Vedic chanting are generated from these 3 swaras, and musical notes also are generated from these 3 swaras or 3 pitches. So from Udatta, Nishad and Gandhara are generated. This is the theory of Indian music. In the text, they say that Nishada, which when we say Sare Gama Pada Nisa, Sare Gama Pada Nisa. So Nishada is the 6th sound there. So this Udatta produces Nishad and Gandhara, and Anudatta produces Rishabh and Devata, and Swarita produces Shadja and Madhyama and Panchama, these 3 notations. Then there are names are different. In classical Indian music, you name them Shadja, Rishabh, Gandhar, Madhyam, Panchama, Nishad and Daivata. But in Vedic tradition of musicology, they are named as next one. Yes, Krushtam, Prathama, Dvitiya, Tritiya, Chaturth, Mandra, and Atiswarya. So names are different, but the concept is the same. Shadja, Rishabh, Gandhar, etc. So later on, these Krushtam, Pratham, Dvitiya, Tritiya, Chaturtha, they were replaced by Shadj, Rishabh, Gandhar, Madhyam, Pancham, Devat, and Nishad. So this is the conceptual framework and how the Vedic swaras, they yield to the notations or notes for Indian music. Next, the notations and modulations which were practiced in rendering the Traiswarya, that means the 3 swaras in the chanting of Rig Veda, that Udatta, Anudatta, and Swarita, these 3 pitches. So you raise your voice, you lower your voice, you use some accent, heightening and lowering, intonations and modulations are also there. So they were musical in nature. They were not simply modulations of voice as we speak in our day-to-day life. They, in themselves, they were musical. So they formed a rhythmic pattern of meter. Meters are there, Chandas is there in Rig Veda, in all the Vedas. So that metrical pattern has rhythm. And sometimes the modern scholars translate Udatta as accent. But accent is formed just by giving emphasis on a particular sound, by the way of raising your voice on a particular, by the way of raising your voice and raising your tone or lowering it suddenly. So that we call it balaghata. There is a aghata, and that is called accent. But accent that we use in our daily way of speaking and doesn't have the musical pattern. But Udatta, Anudatta, and Swarita, they have musical patterns. So Udatta is raising the musical pitch, you can say. So these three pitches, Udatta, Anudatta, and Swarita, they come out from three different registers and are correlated to ascending and descending orders. So this whole conceptual framework indicates a full acquaintance with anatomy and physiology of human body, as well as techniques of producing voice from its different speech organs. The speech organs are there, our throat, our tongue, and lips. So in Vedic grammar also, in the whole conceptual framework of language, linguistic theories, the sthanas are defined, that these are the sounds emanating from throat. These are the labials, Oshtyavarnas, pa, pa, ba, ba, ma, etc. These are the nasals. So the whole anatomy of the body is known, and a due emphasis is given to the correct use of your organ in producing the sound. So whether you are rendering music or whether you are chanting a mantra, you should know whether it is the Kanthya Varna or a Oshtha or a Talavya Varna, it is palatal or cerebral or labial. So you should know this. And this was the science. And many texts are written, Pratishakya texts, they are written. So pronunciation should be very, very accurate. And the Vagindriyas, your speech organs, they should be known. So we will be discussing the concept of meters, chandas tomorrow. But here I would just add that some of the meters in Rig Veda are meant especially for singing. Although Rig Veda is accompanied with recitation, the mantras are for recitation. But some of the mantras are meant for singing, like Gayatri and Pragatha. These are the varieties of Vedic meters. And in Rig Veda, we find Gayatri mantra, Gayatri Chanda, and Pragatha also we find there. And these two names, etymologically, they indicate the act of singing. They are derived from the root gai, to sing. Gayatri, Gaya, Gayan, Gan. So I will not go into the etymology. Gayato Mukhad Udapatatiti Gayatri. These are various etymologies for Gayatri and Pragatha given in the Pandit tradition. So these very names, the very nomenclatures are connected to music or singing. So when Bharat Muni adopted this whole conceptual framework of swaras, the Vedic swaras, he also says that the actors would be using Udatta, Anudatta, and Swarit. These three pitches they would use, whether they are singing, whether they are doing dialogue delivery, they have to know these three pitches. And the fourth one also he added, Kampita. So he not only defined the locus of the body out of which they are to be generated. So he said three sthanas are there, Uras, Kant, and Shiras. This your breast and throat and your head. These are the three places out of which you articulate a sound. It emanates from these three places, and you produce Udatta, Anudatta, and Swaritas from these three places. And he also correlated these sounds and the rhythmic patterns to the sentiments and moods to various situations. So this we may discuss tomorrow when we will be taking up the concept of Chanda in Vedic tradition. Then coming to the next, Nada and Nada Brahman. Although these terms are not directly referred to in the literature I am referring for this lecture, but they are very vital terms, pervasive terms, Nada and Nada Brahman. So Nada is a pervasive term denoting the sound without linguistic signs or syllables. Varnadi Vishesh Hina Vak. I will omit this lengthy citation from Abhinav Gupta, who is one of the greatest philosophers and a mystic and a great poet. So he has given the whole concept of Nada and its correlation with the Chitta Vrittis, with the states of mind, how Nada affects the states of mind and how it comes out of the Chitta Vrittis and Bhairo Shok. All these are correlated to different nadas, different sounds. So Nada therefore has inherent power to denote the state of mind, and this power is termed as Avgamana Shakti, the suggestive power of a sound to affect the human body, to affect human mind also. This our thinkers were aware of this. So even if you are not uttering meaningful sounds, even if you are not talking, if you are chanting some syllables which may be apparently meaningless, but their very sounds may affect your body because they have Avgamana Shakti. They have an inbuilt capacity to affect your physique and your mentality. So Anahat Nada and Ahat Nada. These two concepts are also given in this tradition. And as I said, Ahat Nada is audible sound. Anahat Nada is inaudible sound. These two types of sound or nada are defined. So audible sound, we all know, any sound which you can hear through your physical ear, Shrotrendriya or ear, is Ahat Nada. Just as I'm clapping. So this is Ahat Nada. It may not have apparently any meaning linguistically. It may suggest something. It may suggest applause or something like that. So this is Ahat Nada. But there is a Nada which is not audible, and it happens. It may happen within. So just sometimes when I was a boy and I was hearing musical sounds, so I used to wonder how I can imagine those sounds without hearing them. When I learned some swaras of music, so I found that I can distinguish between Komal Nishada and between Tivra Madhyam and Madhyama, even without hearing them, audibly hearing them, or even without speaking them. Within my mind, I can imagine the difference between them. So about language, we all know that there is a process of, there is a thought process. When the verbalization is not there, the sounds are inaudible and they are in the thought process. The various levels of speech are there, para, pashanti, madhyama, and vaikhari. So the subtlemost level of speech, and then another level where thought and words, they appear, but they are not audible and they are mixed together. And there is a level where thoughts and words appear separately. And ultimately, finally, they are uttered. So there are various levels before the linguistic sound becomes audible. But what about music? So musical sounds, the swaras are also, they happen within. and they are anahata nada. So some music is going on. A musical person, a person who lives in rhythm. So he lives in music, and music is happening within him. Always he lives in music. So some rhythm is going on inaudibly within in his psyche. So this is roughly this is anahata nada. Otherwise it is connected to mystic tradition, to tantric tradition, and they hear this, they have the vision of anahata nada there. So okay, we coming to the next stobha. So there is a concept related to the concept of nada in Sama tradition of music. Stobha is a sound, and it is a primitive kind of activity which emanates, which existed right from the inception of human civilization. Some kind of sounds emanated from the primitive man in the beginning of civilization, and they are adopted in Sama tradition also. And they are called stobha in Sama tradition. So stobha, even if you do not know the concept and name, nomenclature stobha, in music stobha is done. Even in modern music, it may be even Bollywood music, Mumbaiya cinema songs also. So hamma 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 hamma, this kind of sound goes on. Oh, oh, oh. So this, you see, I used to hate this kind of music, but lately I started appreciating it, because the music directors, you see, they are doing this stobha, and Bappi Lahari maybe it is, or maybe it is Rahul Dev Burman, whosoever he is. So they learn classical music. They are aware of the tradition, and then they are having some other way of their own music. So ullai ullai ullayo, ullai ullai ullayo. This kind of sounds in Hindi cinemas when you hear. So this is actually stobha, as I understand it. And maybe my friend Rishiraj Pathak will be a little annoyed to bring all these cinema sounds here. Sama Veda is, Sama Gayan is serene and it leads to peace. And this kind of music may be a little bit disturbing. So without further elaborating upon it, I will request Rishiraj Pathak to unmute himself and chants a few mantras, not mantras actually, to begin the stobha, to give a specimen of stobha, how stobha, the meaningless sounds, they accompany Sama Gayana in Samaveda. So you will see how stobha is done in like aha, ho, how, all these sounds, they are also done when Sama is done. So Rishi Rajji, please come forward, appear, and you have, I think, 1 or 2 minutes. Yes.
Namaskar to all. I am presenting Gurjar Samagana, named Vrata Sama. Hanga 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 how. These are stobhas. Now Samgan. Indrannaro ne madhi ta havantai jat pariyaha junaja tai dhiyastah shuro nrha tashrava tascha kamai agomathai Prajebha yatu vannaha. Again, Stobhas. How, hanga, 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 how, va,
Thank you. So thank you, Pathak ji. Thank you very much. Okay. So we proceed further. You can see how this ascendance and descendance of swaras that is there in the Samagayana, and especially it is Avroha Krama, descending order of notations that is there in Samagana. Then coming to next one, musical instruments in Rigveda. So I hope that there are some musicians in the audience here, some professors or teachers of music. So they all might be knowing that Veena is the oldest musical instrument, stringed instrument in India. But in Rigveda, we don't find a mention of Veena. Instead, an instrument named as Vana that is described by the seers of Rigveda. So Vana was a stringed instrument, and the word dhatu is connected to Vana. Vana has 7 dhatus. Dhatu is also a musical sound. And in Bharata's Natya Shastra, Matu and Dhatu, these two terms are defined. So the swaras and musical sounds, they are called dhatus, and Vana has these musical sounds. And so many references of this instrument, Vana, are there in Rigveda. Dhamanto Vanam Maruta. The Marutganas are described as playing Vana. And there is a commentary on all the 4 Vedas by Sayana. So Sayana Bhashya in 14th century, Sayana says that Vana is an instrument having 100 strings. So it is Shatatantri Veena. So descriptions of Shatatantri Veenas. The Veena having 100 strings. They are found in later literature also. And Vana is a kind of Veena, lute, which has several strings, or 100 strings, you can say. And the very derivation of the word Vana is, it comes from one, to produce sound. And the chanting of mantras is also compared to the playing of Vana. So in this way, we see that the mantras are musical, and there is a comparison between the playing of this instrument and recitation of Rigvedic mantras. So next, there are several references. I think I will omit this plethora of references in several mantras in Rigveda. This instrument Vana is described, and because of the prominence of Vana in activities related to music, the word Vana came to denote all kinds of musical activities. So when they say Vana will happen now, it means that there will be a musical rendering, including singing and playing of instruments. So because of the prominence of Vana, this Vana became so much an important instrument. Another instrument, coming to the next one, is Karkari. It has Rasva Ikara and Dirgha Ikara both, Karkari and Karkari. And this instrument was also in practice as per Rigveda. It is also said to be an stringed instrument, although I'm not very sure. And there is another word, Gargari, and Gargari is Ghatam. So Karkari and Gargari, they seem to me almost the same instrument. But many scholars say that Karkari is a stringed instrument and it is different from Gargari. And Karkari is used for producing sweet melodies in low tone. And very beautiful descriptions of playing of Karkari are there. The seers say that the birds are chirping like the sound of Karkari. And Atharvaveda also describes the playing of Karkari. And Gargari is another type. I will omit it. Yeah, I collected some references about the use of Karkari in Sanskrit literature. So it denotes a jar, a jug, or a ghatam. So that is why I am saying that it is an instrument like ghatam vadya. So Karkari is another type of drum referred in Rigveda. Gargari, sorry. So Gargari is a ghatam type of vadya, and the name Gargari is an onomatopoetic name. So it produces gurgling sounds. Therefore, it is called Gargari. And in Rigveda, Gargari is described as an instrument producing terrific sound. Very powerful sound it produces. Even nowadays, this Ghatam Vadya has a very powerful sound. So, Vaswarati Gargaro Godha Pari Sanishwanat Pinga Pari Chanishkadindraya Brahmodyatam. So this Gargari is being played in loud tones. It is resounding voice of the Gargari, the mantra says. Another instrument, next one, is described in Rigveda, that is Dunduvi. And Dunduvi is very well known to the students and teachers of Sanskrit also. So many descriptions of Dunduvi are there. And Dunduvi is a big drum producing loud sound. And Dunduvi was played in battlefields before the start of a battle, war. And it was played after the victory also. And there is an interesting simile in Rigveda comparing the sound of crushing the mortar by pestle to the sound of Dunduvi. So these beautiful descriptions of the house of a grahastha household, they are there. So the mortar is called ulukhala. Even in our languages, we have this word ulukhala or okhli in Hindi we say. So this musal, I think pestle is crushing something in the mortar, and the sound, very loud sound is being produced. So the ulukhala is being invoked, it is being addressed. Oh, ulukhalak, you should produce, you should resound like the Dunduvi of the victorious in the war, this mantra says. So iha dyumattamam vada jayatam iva Dunduvi, it says. And therefore Dunduvi is known for its thunderous sound. It was played to boost the morale of the warriors going to the battlefield. And there are very picturesque descriptions of Dunduvi being invoked to lead an army to victory. And these mantras, you see, as I said, that the rhythmic patterns in a chanda, they provoke some mood. So all the mantras which describe Dundhubi, they appear like marching songs, as if the army is marching. Upashwashaya prithvi mutadyam purutrate manutam vishtitam jagat sadundube sajur indrena devair durad daviyo apaseda shatrun. So fill the space between the earth and sky by thy resonance. Upashwashaya prithivim mutadyam. So very, very beautiful wording is there. So your resonance fulfills the whole spectrum of the space, and let all the beings know of your beatings. Te manutam vishtitam jagat. O Dundhubi, you are a companion of Indra and gods. Drive away our enemies. Apased shatrun. So all these very robust kind of descriptions. So playing of Dundhubi appears that as if the army band is being played, and all so many other mantras are there. Akandaya balamojon adhani nishtani durita badhamana apaprotha dundube duchuna ita indrasya mushtirasi vilayasva. So all these descriptions of Dundhubi, it's resounding and challenging the enemies. It is invoked to give strength, and may your hummings repel our enemies. You drive away those who rejoice at giving us pain. You are the fist of it. It should be fist, not first. Indrasya mushtirasi. This is a metaphor. So the Dundhubi is like the mushti of Indra, and you make us strong. Vilayasva. So all these descriptions and marching of the army for victory, these descriptions and the playing of Dundhubi, they are in Rigvedic mantras. So Dundhubi was this kind of instrument. In Atharvaveda also, next one, so many descriptions of Dundhubi are there, and very poetic and very ferocious, robust kind of descriptions are there. Sanjanayan pratana urdhumayur kuyya granano bauta vichakshva. So emerge victorious, resound, and have a look around. Devim vacham dundhuba agurasva. You see, bring the properties of our enemies. Shatrunam ubharasva veda. So all these invocations to Dundhubi, they are there, and the very chanting of this mantra would be like the sound of a marching song, and there are descriptions that Dundhubi is played by the horn of a deer or a stick. Nowadays, Nagada is an instrument almost like Dundhubi, and Nagada we see being played by sticks, by bamboo sticks or by wooden sticks. But in Vedic literature, it is said that Dundhubi is played through deer's horn or by a stick also, and it is played on festivals, on auspicious occasions. And Sama Sutra refers to a typical type of Dundhubi called Bhumi Dundhubi, and it was an instrument stationed in the pit on the earth and was played by the tail of an ox. So many kinds of Dundhubis are described in Vedic literature, and many details I would be omitting. Another very important instrument is Aghati, and in Rigveda as well as in Atharvaveda we have descriptions of Aghati. It is Ghanavadya. Ghanavadya is solid instrument. So in Indian music, 4 types of instruments are described. Tata is a stringed instrument. Avanadha is a covered instrument, covered by leather, like tabla or this Dundhubi also. And Ghana is a solid instrument like manjira or cymbals, and sushira is like flute, vanshi, played by blowing. So this aghati is like this aghati is a ghanvadya, solid instrument, and it was made of timber, and it also produced resounding notes. And there is a very beautiful hymn in Rigveda which is called Aranyani Sukta, a hymn for the forest goddess, and picturesque descriptions of forest, the whole ecosystem of forest, they are there. So the seer says that there are sounds as if the aghati is being played in this Aranyani, in this forest. Aghatis are resounding in this forest. Aghati bhiriva dhavayan aranyanir mahiyase. And very metaphorical descriptions are there. The birds and insects produce different kinds of musical sounds in the forest. In Atharvaveda also, aghati is described, and it is accompanied with the karkari, with the sound of karkari. Next. So other instruments are bakura and nali, and these are the two instruments mentioned in Rigveda, and bakura is accompanied with drati. So drati means a leather bag. A leather bag is connected to bakura, and drati is also known in Sanskrit as bhastrika or basra. In Hindi we say mashak, a leather bag. So when I was a small boy, where there was no water supply in our homes, in our villages, so we used to engage a vishti who used to bring water through a mashak, a very big leather bag. Some 50 liters of water he would bring in that mashak. So that is called bastra, and that is drati. So that drati is blown with the playing of bakura. It is you can say bagpiper kind of thing. And I will omit the references from the dictionaries of Monier Williams, etc. And nadi is another instrument. It is a kind of flute having several holes, and it is a pipe, you can say. And Rigveda describes the playing of nali. Nadi or nali, both pronunciations are used. And nadi is being played in the abode of Yama. This mantra says. So next. And next, please. My system is not working. Other instruments are adambara and veena, tunava, shankha, that is conch, and pani and talava. These instruments are mentioned in Yajurveda. You can say that the musical system is developing, and veena has now come instead of vana, which is also like veena. But now we have the name veena also, and proper veenas are being played. So many descriptions of veena recital, veena being played, they are there. And there is a very exhaustive list of various artisans, craftsmen in Rigveda in the 30th adhyaya of, Yajurveda, in the 30th adhyaya of Yajurveda, that these people will be invited for the rituals, for the yajna ceremony. So Nattaya Sutam Gitaya Shailusham Karave Rata Karmanam. This mantra is there. So for dance, you invite Suta, and you invite Shailusha for Gita songs. So all these artisans are to be invited. They will be doing their performances in the yajna ceremony, because yajna ceremony is a community affair. Various kinds of various sections of society assemble. They have so many kinds of entertainments, programs. So all these musical instruments are also described in Yajurveda. So I will not read the whole passage. Some musical instruments which are not mentioned in Rigveda and Samveda, they are described here, like adambara. And veena is of course described, and shankha, conch is also described. And the artisans who would be joining this congregation during the yajna ceremony, Ashwamedha yajna, Vajpaya yajna, and Agnishtoma yajna, all these Vedic yajnas, they have musical renderings by the players of Veena, and other artists are also called. Their fees are also mentioned, that the acharyas of Veena would be paid 100 coins, and these rules are laid down in the Vedic text, in the Shauta Sutras. So this whole system was there that catered for the musical activities, maybe around 1000 BC or prior to that. So this was the development of Indian music in the Vedic period. Coming to the next, next please. So Adambar, Veena, and Tunava and Talava, they are the instrument listed in the passage in the earlier slide. And Adambar is said to be synonymous to Pataha. Pataha is Nagada, a kind of big drum. And with the very name Adambara denotes that it produces thundering, resounding sound. Pataha Dambarau Samau, the dictionary Amarkosha says that Pataha and Adambara, they are synonymous. And the very root from which the word Adambara is derived is dubbi. So the sound of throwing, the sound of hitting an instrument. So that instrument is supposed to produce a big sound. And Veena, of course, is the stringed instrument mentioned in Yajurveda for the first time. So for the first time here we have a Sushir Vadya, an instrument which is played by blowing from the mouth. So Tunava is a Sushir Vadya, and Talava is a solid instrument, is a Ghanavadya like Manjira. So these are the descriptions of Adambar, Veena, Tunava, and Talava. Next, please. And yes, so I wanted to give just a sort of a specimen of recitation of Rigveda before we come to the Samagana. And you can just have a rough idea of the recitation of Rigveda. It has a musical quality, but it is not singing like Sama. So these mantras are Saraswati Sukta and Bhumi Sukta. This a hymn from the 6th mandala, 61st hymn from the 6th mandala of Rigveda, that the audio I had sent. So that audio will be played. Please. And you can read the mantra also if possible. Is it audible?
No, it's not audible.
Then if it is possible to run the audios which I had sent, you will have to connect them immediately. The audios were there.
Right.
Otherwise, skip it over.
Why
We
it is
leave
not? Why it's not hearing?
No, we are not hearing it.
If it is not working, then we cannot.
No, I think it will work.
Because I had sent the
I know.
slides with attachment, and the audio separately also I had sent.
Can't hear?
No.
Now my laptop is not working. Suddenly it has stopped. I cannot help now.
Let us see.
We can skip it over. If Anmol Upadhyay is there and if time is there, if he likes, then he can chant Rigvedic mantras. But maybe later.
I can do it at the end.
Yeah, we go to the next. Yeah,
Okay.
We skip this slide and the next one also, because it will just take time if I recite them, and that will not be a proper Vedic recitation. I'm not trained as a Vedic Ved party.
Not coming either?
No.
Okay.
When I was running the slides, they were playing.
Right.
Now we come to the Sama. And this was the Vedic recitation as per Rigveda method, as per the method of chanting of Rigveda. And in Samaveda, whatever mantras are there, they are all from Rig Veda. So Samaveda doesn't have independent mantras of its own. All the hymns, suktas are from Rig Veda, but there is a style of rendering them through music. So that system of music has developed, and the mantras of Rig Veda are being rendered through that system of music. And those mantras which were rendered through that system of music, they were collected in Samaveda, and the tradition of Samagayana developed from that. So that tradition, of course, is very old. It is as old as Rig Veda, because Rig Veda itself refers to Sama, to the singing of Sama. So many references are there that gods are being eulogized through Samagayana. This mantra says, Deva Angirasam Samabhi Stuyamana, and Samagiyamanam. Sama is being sung. So all these references are there in Rig Veda itself, that the Rig Vedic seers knew that the mantras which we have composed in Rig Veda, they can be rendered musically, but other seers will be singing them. There will be other persons who will be rendering them, and there will be a system of a musical rendering. So these mantras from Rig Veda, they were collected in Samaveda and they were presented through a musical system. Otherwise, this musical system is very, very well known in Rig Veda and in Atharvaveda also. Please, next, please. So Sama means harmony also. Sama, as we say in music also, we reach Sama, a state of harmony. So Samagana was to be done to establish a dialogue with the gods, which culminated into the experience of Sama, or equilibrium, you can say. There is a word Sama in English also. It starts, the spelling starts with P, P-S-A-L-M, but it is pronounced as Sama. And there is a link between Sama in Sanskrit and this Sama, I think the biblical tradition of Sama. And I consulted the dictionaries of H.H. Wilson and Monier Williams. So they have translated the words P-S-A-L-M as Stotram Stuti in Sanskrit. So the whole Indo-European languages, the Indo-European family of languages is somehow connected to this terminology, to this musical terminology also. And the Upanishads, next one, yeah, the Upanishads speak about the derivation of the word Sama by joining Sa and Ama. So these are rather intricate explanations of a term. So Sa stands for Vak or speech, and Ama stands for life energy, prana. And joining Sa to Ama becomes Sama. That means speech joins life energy, and that renders into Sama. That becomes Sama. And that Samagayan should invoke life energy as per this explanation. And I will omit all these stanzas from Upanishads because I think we are running short of time. So next one, please. So Sama therefore stands for creating balance between the mundane and the divine, and Samagana was rendered through 7 notes, which are called aksharas, and this rendering was meant for the mantras of Rig Veda and not of the other samvitas. Richi Adhyudam Sama. This is the definition of Sama, that only the riks or the mantras of Rig Veda, they will be rendered in Samagana, not mantras from Yajurveda or Atharvaveda. Ya Rik Tat Sama. Next one. So Rig Veda mantras only are admitted in the Samagayana. And therefore Archika is another name for Samagana. Archika comes from Rik, and Rik is the mantra of Rig Veda. So the rendering of mantras of Rig Veda is Archika, and Archika is a name for Sama also. And in the terminology of Natya Shastra, we can say that Rigveda provides the matu, that means the sounds, and Sama gives the dhatu, that is musical notes. So these mantras adopted from Rigveda, they were rendered into musical system in Samaveda. So this was the combination of matu and dhatu as per the musical terminology of Bharata's Natya Shastra. The sounds being rendered in notations, you can say. So there are hundreds of ways of rendering the Sama mantras. Therefore, it is said, Sahasra Vartma Sama Veda. Sahasra is 1000, Vartma is path or way. So there are hundreds of paths or ways for Sama rendering. This is what Patanjali says. And Jaimini in Mimamsa Sutra, Jaimini also says, Sahasram Giti Upaya. There are thousands of ways of singing Sama. So just as in nowadays in music, Bhairavi can be rendered in hundreds of ways by different musicians in different gharanas. In the same way, there were gharanas of Sama singing. Generation after generation in families, Sama was being practiced, and hundreds of ways, thousands of ways of singing Sama were there. Next one, please. Then these are the two sections of Samaveda, and different styles of singing the mantras of these two sections were adopted. Purvarchik is the first part, Uttarchik is the later half, and these are the varieties of Samagana. Gramagana, the mantras being sung in a grama or village. Then Aranyagana, the mantras being rendered in a forest, in solitude. So they have some kind of mystic feeling. Rahasya Gayagana also, they are called. So they have a kind of a spiritual quality. They are to be practiced in a solitude, in a forest. And then Uhagana involves mantras which are to be adopted in a ritual, in a yagya ceremony. So various types of mantras of Sama, various types of varieties of Samagana were there, depending on the location, on the situation, according to which the Sama is being presented. Next one, please. Then we will omit this, the number of mantras in Samaveda, and there are different views about the mantras of Samaveda. Next one, please. Then Udatta, Anudatta, and Swarita. These three pitches are applied in Samaveda, and the notations are given in a different way. In Sama tradition of making notations, instead of lines below and above, numbers are used. So this is a typical method of giving notations for Sama mantras. So this is an example. Agna ayahi vitaye. This is the line from Rigveda. So for for Anudatta, you will put a horizontal line below. For Swarita, you will put a vertical line above. And for Udatta, no sign. This is the system of giving notations of Udatta, Anudatta, and Swarit, just as you see in the first line from Rigveda. In Samaveda, it will run through numbers. So Agna ayahi vitaye will be there, but 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 will be given. So these numbers indicate a descending order. So Sama Gana has descending order in the scale, and it has nidhana prakriti. It culminates into a lowering of the pitch. So this is the method of notations, preparing notations of Sama. Then these 3 pitches become 7 notes, as I said earlier also. And these Krusht, Pratham, Dvitiya, Tritiya, Chaturth, etc., their names are given and they culminate into the 7 notes in later musical tradition also. So there are references, so many references are there how these Sama Swaras, the 7 notes of Sama, are linked to the 7 notes of our classical music. And the Prathama in Sama is the Madhyama of classical music of Venu, you can say. And this Dvitiya in Sama is Gandhara, it should be Gandhara. And Tritiya is Rishabha, etc., etc. So this will yield the scale as under Ma Ga Re Sa Dha Ni Pa. In this way, the scale would emerge. So you will start from this Madhyam, Ma, and then you proceed further. So this is the order of Pratham, Dvitiya, Tritiya, and they become Madhyam, etc. And going to the next one, please. So I will skip over these technical details. There are problems about the nomenclatures of these Prathama, Dvitiya, Tritiya, of the notes of the Sama Gana, and they do not actually denote a mathematical order like modern scale of Shadja, Rishabh, Gandhar, etc. Here Shadja would come first, Pratham, and Rishabh second, Sa Re Ga Ma Pa Dha Ni Sa. In this way, Sa will be first and Re will be second. Here the nomenclatures are there, Pratham, Dvitiya, Tritiya, but they are not coming as the first, the second, and the third, etc. So this is a rather a different kind of scale. And here Krushta becomes Prathama. So you go to the next, perhaps that will be a little bit clear from that. Otherwise, when Rishiraj Pathak sings, you may perhaps understand how this scale proceeds in Sama. So there is a descending order in Sama. So when you say Ma Ga Re Sa Dha Ni Pa, in this way. So here the Devata has preceded Nishada. Normally it should be Ma Ga Re Sa Dha Ni, Ma Ga Re Sa Ni Dha Pa, Ma Ga Re Sa Dha Ni Pa. In this way it should be there. But here it is Ma Ga Re Sa Dha Ni Pa. So Devata has come before Nishada. That is the difference. So and this goes in Samagayana, in Samgana. So the interpretation is that it is Vakra Avaroha. It is somewhat twisted descending order. Next one, please. And there is a different interpretation by Sayana, who connects them in simple order, that Krushta is Nishada and Devata is Prathama. So this order will be there. Then it will be like Nidha Pa Ma Ga Re Sa. The clear descendants will be maintained without violating or without twisting, as per Sayana's version. Next, please. So these are two different interpretations. A bit complicated, and when Rishiraj comes, maybe his rendering would somewhat make it clear. There is the concept of Shruti. So Shrutis are micro intervals between 7 swaras, and there are 5 Shrutis described in Sama tradition. So when you render the musical notations, there is an interval and there is a pitch between 2 swaras. So that is called Shruti. So and there is this concept of bhakti is also there. There are 5 sections in Samagana, and the beginning, and then they are like alap, jod, jhala in modern music. Also, you have different sections. When you sing, you have alap first, then bandish, and then dugun, etc. So almost similar to that, you can say, just for a very wild and rough kind of comparison, this hunkara, hinkara, or prastava, udgita, and pratihara and nidhana. They are the 5 sections in Samagana, and there are these 3 singers. They render these 5 sections, and who will do what, this is also defined. So hunkara is rendered, hunkara is the beginning, like the alapa, and hunkara is rendered by the previous one, please. Yeah, hunkara is rendered by the first singer, prastota, and then this was to be followed by rendering of the prastota, who would present the line of the phrases, and then after this udgata will join, and he will present udgita, and then all of them would join. So this is the order of rendering these 5 sections, and there are several other concepts of Samagana. I would now request Rishiraj Pathak ji to present some Samagana, and maybe he, by his rendering, he makes these sections clear, and these various sections and the way they were done by the Prastota, Udgata, and Pratiharta. So Rishiraj Pathak, and he will present a specimen of Samagana as per these nomenclatures and these varieties.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes. I am presenting Namastau Agneyam Sama.
Please make him visible also. Yeah.
Namastau Agnai. This is first bhakti. Ojasa ai Grinan ta ai de Vakrishtaya. Second bhakti. Amaye. Third bhakti. Ma auhova. Fourth bhakti. And last is Tramadda ya. Brihat Sama. Also, I am presenting Brihat Sama. Lord Krishna told in Gita, Brihat Sama Tatha Samnam. Auhoitvamidhi havamahaye satau vaja syakara tuva auhova vritrayishu vai Drasa ata patin nara swankashtha auhova tu arva
We can go to the next slide. So in this way, in the scale of Sama, each one of the 7 swaras can become Shadja. That is the difference. In present day music, the Shadja would always become the Shadja would always remain Shadja. But in Samagana, out of all the 7 swaras, any swara can become Shadja. So the scale would proceed according to that. And the order of the 7 notes would also proceed according to that. And this formation would lead to Murchanas. Murchana is the ascending and descending order of the musical notes. And in this way, this theory and practice of Samagana led to the formation, led to the development of Indian music and its distinctive systems. These are the systems, Shruti, Jati, etc. And this whole concept is also related to Ayurveda because the 5 basic elements, Prithvi, Earth, Vayu, air, Jal, water, Tejas, Agni, and Akash, ether or space, they are correlated to sense organs, and sense organs are correlated to Nada, and the whole, this cosmos and the Panchamahabhutas, they are correlated to the whole system of music. So in this way, there is a cosmic view before there is a cosmic view in the tradition of Indian music. And normally in rigs, when sung with a ritual one, in the rigs, 1 swara is applied when they are sung in ritual, and 2 swaras are applied for gathas. We will be discussing gatha tomorrow. Gatha is a form of chanda, and normally 3 swaras are applied in Sama Gana. We will omit this assert. And there are, I will now wind up because we are running short of time. And there are several descriptions of musical renderings in ritual performances, in Katyayana Shauta Sutra, descriptions of dance, music, and playing of various instruments. They are there in several yagyas, and singing of gathas is described, Veena recital is described. So all this you see around 1500 BC, 2000 BC, this situation is there. So the textual corpus of Vedic literature, it gives evidence of very rich tradition of music that has developed. Next one, please. And yeah, these are the references. Shatpat Brahmana is a well-known Brahmana related to Yajurveda, and the player of Veena is called Veena Gangin here, and how they join the ritual, how they play Veena, and how they are called on the occasion of ritual. All these descriptions are there, and how they will sit around the Yagyavedi, they will start singing the gathas, and the Veena playing will accompany with the singing of Gita or Gatha. These descriptions are there in these notes. And a very wonderful concept is there in this citation from Maitreya Aranyaka, that the whole body is Veena. It is Devi Veena. And the physical Veena made out of wood is the Darvi Veena. And your body itself is a Veena. It is the divine Veena, they say. It is Devi Veena. So the very metaphorical description of this Devi Veena and how it resounds. So your body becomes a medium for divine voice. You make your body a Veena to become a medium, to serve a medium for the divine voice. That is the concept. So I will omit reading these excerpts, citations. Next one, please. Yeah, this is the description of Shatatantri Veena. Shatatantri Veena and how it is made, what kind of wood will be employed in manufacturing the Shatatantri Veena. The names of trees are there, Palash, Udumbar, etc. And how the strings will be tied, and it will have 10 holes, and in each hole 10 strings will be there, so that makes 100 strings. And how it is played, that is also described. These are all Brahmana text, and they give these descriptions. So next one also, and we are almost these Avanadha Vadyas, the drums, they are also described, and their manufacturing is also described in Brahmana texts. So all these, you see, these are the references from Katyayana Shota Sutra and Latyayana Shota Sutra. This Latyayana Shota Sutra describes 100 strings, the Veena of 100 strings. And the other text, Katyayana Shota Sutra, also describes, and the way they are played, that description is also there. So after this, there are some pictures from ancient sculptures. Next one. And there you see, next one, please. This is a kind of veena which was prevalent around 200 BC. This is from Bharhut. And you see it is in the shape of a bow, and various strings are tied to the bow, and it is played by putting your fingers on those strings like this. They have a instrument called Surmandal nowadays like this. So this was the old veena, and in Vedic time also this kind of veena was in practice. Next one you see is also a veena, and it is also in the shape of a bow and having strings, and the string is being played by hand by the player. So these are the ancient sculpture. This is called Pinaki Veena, and this is the sculpture of 200 BC from Chittor. And next one is a drum, and this is also around I think 200 BC, and this drum is Panava. So this is the old kind of drum, and these such drums were also in practice. So here I finish my lecture. There was some disturbance in my system also, and I am very grateful to you for this patient hearing, and I am thankful to Professor Sanandan Kumar Tripathi. Of course, they didn't work, that audio cassette from Rigveda, which I had sent, but Anmol Upadhyaya and the students from Tirupati University, they had prepared this hymns from Rigveda. So I wanted you to have an idea of the chanting of Rigveda. Anyway, perhaps tomorrow there may be time and we can have them if time permits. I'm grateful to Rishiraj Pathak, who has been of great help. And he is an expert of Sama tradition, both its theory and practice. And I'm thankful to Dr. Sanjay Dwivedi also. Some of the reference material I collected from him. And thank you very much to all of you. Now, if there are any questions, and if time permits, we can have some discussion, some comments, or some questions.
Yeah,
Thanks.
there are few questions, and I'll read the first one. See,
Yeah.
the first, I'm not sure about the name, but Lakota Native Americans have similar concept of sound impacting brain. You know, that was a discussion which you were having. So that's the comment, I think, not a question.
Okay. Thank you very much for the comment. Yeah.
Yeah. So the question by Sriram, see, the Tamil literature calls the bow type veena as yaz. So perhaps it's a more of a Tamil pronunciation or
Yeah,
the literature description. Yeah.
the pronunciation is called as yar.
Mm.
The ra is a very peculiar pronunciation in Tamil literature. It is called as yar.
Yeah,
So it's more of a comment. Yeah. About
Godha.
the
If I
pronunciation.
heard it correct, if I heard it correctly, if it is Godha Veena, then Godha Veena is mentioned in Brahmana literature. In Katyayana Shautu Sutra, the Godha Veena is being played. But the other one, I cannot decipher, yard or whatever it is. So I cannot say. But if it is Godha Veena in Tamil, then it is mentioned in Sanskrit Vedic literature also. Yeah.
Yeah, move on.
Anybody else?
Oh, but there are 9 comments.
Yeah, no,
I saw-
those were just good morning or
Okay, all right.
welcome.
So any live comments? Anybody wants to comment on or question first, not comment.
You have mentioned about descending order.
Mm.
What about ascending order? When did that start?
In Sama, they have descending order because it should lead to prashama or quietude. In other systems of music, in later music, we do have aroh, and we have aroh and avroh both ascending order and descending order. But in Sama, it is, as far as I understand, only descending order is in practice.
Any other question? Louder.
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Just for here. See, these Pobha sounds seem very, very ancient. So when humans came from out of Africa and they reached India, so they must have brought these with them. Because we know chimps and baboons also make similar sounds. So during the evolution, Homo sapiens must have developed these sounds because their proto ancestors also have those sounds.
Right. But I think what he's saying is...
I quite agree with you. And that is what I wanted to point out also, that this is a memory of the primitive man who used to produce such sounds. And they have preserved the memory. And they are incorporated as a stobha in Samgana. That is there. So you are right.
Also, what you mentioned is the
and Native Americans continue to this day.
Integrate as a musicality. You know, in the tone of stuff. It's not that pure noise, but the Gana. So that is the new thing. Any other question?
Just one more, that Native Americans continue to this day. Like if you go to their powwows and their rituals, they have the same, like similar, they have ascension, descension, aro, avro of their sounds.
Okay.
Yeah. Shivram here, just a quick point to clarify actually. From your work that you have, seen, can you also see a difference mentioned in any literature in terms of difference between Grameya Gana and the Aranya Gana in Samaveda?
I cannot say actually. I don't know whether Rishiraj Pathak can clarify it. The only difference apparently is that the mantras of Gram Gana are sung in the community in a village. And the mantras of Aranya Gana, they are sung by an individual in solitude. But what would be the difference of the quality and rendering and the musical tone? That I cannot say. I do not know whether still it is in practice. If Rishiraj Pathak can throw some light on it.
Yes, sir. I'm more interested in knowing the tonal or sound difference between these practices, singing practices.
Yeah, it's a good question. And let us hear from the person who rendered Sama, if he is here and if he can.
Your Risiraj is here.
Rishraj.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. A tonal difference or sound difference is based on swaras. If swaras are as well as Gramegiya Ganas swaras, then there would not be any change. These
All right. So
Yeah.
we have some veteran scholars are here. So before we close, let me ask. I think Professor Aklujkar has joined. He joined late. He could not introduce him. But if he has any comments, I see three of them. I see also Professor Bhargav Thakur, and I see Professor R.N. Iyengar, so who are joining from various places. So I will say if they have any comments, briefly, they can share and we can record. Professor Aklujkar.
Professor Mishra, I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Today has been a day of very impressive erudition, as well as a day in which we had several mechanical failures. So I'm sorry for not missing the first few minutes of Professor Tripathi's lecture. Professor Tripathi is a very valuable person in the field of Sanskrit. He combines several different things, and I would have said in my introduction how many fields he combines. He's an excellent administrator. He is a very good scholar. He spans from ancient period to modern period. He is an excellent memory for who knows what, and therefore the way he can bring people together is simply impressive. That is who specializes in different varieties of Vedic recitation, who specializes in different varieties of Sanskrit literature and so on. I think one good fitting tribute for his scholarly activity would be to create an institution where these subspecialties of Sanskrit or traditional ancient learning can be brought together. I'm not saying that they're not being brought together, but brought together with a specific recognition in the very name of the institution, and in a way that younger scholars will be inspired to come to this institution to learn as well as to contribute in different ways, identify the desiderata and make the desiderata a creative force. So that is something we can do and create more scholars like him, although it's not possible in my estimation to create one scholar like him who is quite unique. And I have not known him I have known him for many years, but I have not known him as early as I should have. So thank you very much, Professor Tripathi. Thank you, Professor Mishra. And I'll stop there.
And Professor Bhargav Thakur, you have any comment? Bhargav Thakur, is he there? No? I think he's...
Okay.
No, he's not there. He is there, but he's not responding. I don't know why. All right.
Yes.
How about Professor Iyengar? He's a musicologist himself. So, Iyengar sir, unmute yourself. He's unmuting, not is he?
Is he being recognized here as iPad, or does he have?
No, he's there. R.N. Iyengar is there, but he's not
Iyengar
unmuting.
Recognized here as his
he's unmuted. Okay.
Name. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Brief
You're
comment.
able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I enjoyed the talk immensely, a very, very erudite lecture. There was a point made by Dr. Tripathi about something about linguistics, that is grammar, that was on Swara and Vyanjana, that, Vyanjana by itself cannot be heard, but only with Swara it can be heard. That is, of course, a very important point. And I have always been thinking, as a scientist actually analyzing sounds and other things, that a spectrum analysis has to be done for these sounds, particularly the Sanskrit alphabets, along with the Vyanjanas and Swaras. Then I think the structure of the Vyanjanas will become more clear. That is one of the points which came to my mind when I listened to the talk. I thought I should share that with this august audience. Thank you very much.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you. Yes.
If Professor
Sir,
Mishra,
can
if
I
I
come
may
in?
add something, the remark about Swara and Vyanjana is based on Patanjali's observation. Vyanjanani punar natabharya bhavanti. The consonants are like the wives of different actors. They're depicted in a play, just as the same wife can be given to different male actors in a play. The Vyanjanas can go to different swaras and become, through their dependence on swaras, they can get their individuality. So thinking has been done, but Patanjali did not elaborate because he didn't have to, but it's found in the Mahabhashya of Patanjali. So I think someone like Professor Tripathi, Professor Iyengar, they can elaborate upon this.
Yes.
More on it. But spectrum analysis, I think, has been done. Just the two have not been brought together. That's why I mentioned the need to have one place where several of these individual specializations can come together.
Professor Bhargav Thakur, I think he has unmuted. If you want to comment.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Namaskar, sir. This is Bhargav Thakur from Ahmedabad. I'm a great disciple of Professor Tripathi, and I'm so thankful to him that he shared this knowledge and imparted all this knowledge about music, Indian music. And I'm very, very thankful to him, and I'm thankful to Bijoyji also. There is a small suggestion. The kind of lecture which Professor Tripathi gave right now, can it be shared with the musical schools of India? Especially, I'm interested in Indian musical schools of India. Especially in Ahmedabad, there is a great school which is called Saptak, which is working in Ahmedabad since last 40 years. And they have, every year, they have a huge festival of Indian classical music, and they have a great archives also. Can it be shared? This lecture can be shared?
We'll put everything on the website, and people can download from there. I think, but it will take some time to produce them and so on. So give us a couple of weeks. They will be posted.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, and I hope that you will keep me informed.
IndiaDiscoveryCenter.org.
Yeah, please,
okay.
Please.
Okay.
I'll keep on watching, and I'll be grateful to you also. Thank you so much.
Right, it's not a grateful. I think we kind of are trying to do this as a service to see whether we can really understand it. See, it's not simply, we are not a narrative part. See, we are in the US.
Yes.
Because the
Yes,
question is, who are you? It is not that these terms important. It is to relate these terms to the average man, woman on the street, that this is what we are. So that question.
Yes, sir. I'm always a student of Indian theater art and music.
Very good, very good. Okay, any other question or comment?
I'll remain as a student till my end of my life.
Right. Any other question or comment? Last person.
No, sir. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you very much. Any other person has anything to share from our So if not, so why not all unmute yourself and have a round of applause? Can you all unmute? Can Chandu unmute them?
Thanks
Unmute
you.
everyone.
Thank you once again, sir.
Yeah, we
Thank you very much. Thanks
can
to all.
you have a round of applause? Just 1 second. Let all unmute and then round of applause. Can we? Okay.